We're going to talk about HTML5 web and game development. And today we are going to talk about a quick overview about what HTML is, what has changed very recently, and some popular element tags that we need to know. So we have an expectation that we know what HTML is. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, the language used for web documents. It's not a programming language per se, but rather a language that identifies the meaning, purpose, and structure of text within a document. So why did HTML have to change? Because the web has changed. So HTML5 is the latest specification of the HTML language and represented a major break with previous markup languages. The purpose of the intense changes to the language was to standardize many new ways in which developers were using it, as well as to encourage a single set of best practices with regards to web development. Getting a handle on HTML5 isn't just about learning which CSS features replace the old HTML, etc. If you want to get an intuitive sense of HTML5, it's best to understand how these objectives affected the development of the language itself in the first place. We'll just quickly go through the new features of HTML5 as we are already aware of most of them. So what's new in the latest HTML5 update? Semantic markup, forms, HTML5 web storage. We then have WebSocket. We then have the server-sent events. Next is Canvas. And then we have the audio video, we have geolocation, microdata. Finally, we have drag and drop. So these are the very popular and necessary semantic element tags that people generally use in the web pages. We have loads of other element tags, but I haven't really listed them all down here just in the interest of time. But we do have a lot of them, but these are the very common ones that we use in the regular basis for the development of web applications. We now move to the topic of the day, the responsive web design. So what is a responsive web design? Responsive design allows your website content to flow freely across all screen resolutions and sizes and renders it to look great on all devices. It also makes it unnecessary to maintain different versions of your websites for mobile and desktop and saves your time, resources, and effort. A modern-looking, mobile-friendly, and fast website is a prerequisite to growing your business and attracting new customers. It makes your online presence more solid and shows you as more trustworthy to the customers. To make your website responsive, you have to add some additional code to your existing site. Let me give you an example. So in the earlier days, we didn't have tablets, we didn't have a lot of smartphones with different resolutions that we have right now. So the website that we made earlier was only targeted for the computer screens. So we always had a very static size and a fixed size for your web app. But now that we have so many other devices like the tablets, the mobile phones, we have to make sure that our application is also compatible for those. So there are some companies, there are some people who write specific targeted code for computer screens, for mobile phones, for tablets. This is kind of okay, but what happens if you want to add a new button or a new screen to the application right now? So you have three different code bases to maintain. So you will have to add that new button or the new page to the computer screen code, to the tablet code, and for the mobile phone codes. So this is definitely not cost effective, isn't it? So in that case, we will have to think about a responsive web design where you only have one code base. Of course, you add additional code to that one code base, but it's just one code base, right? You have to add additional code base to your existing site to make your website more responsive. This additional code will provide instructions and performance parameters to trigger the changes and make your layouts fluid depending on the device that you are in. So in this way, the same version of the website is served to users on different devices. Only the content is transformed and rearranged for better viewability. So what is the advantages of using a responsive web design from what I've told so far? Of course, it gives you a better user experience. You attract a lot of people. It's cost effective because you use one code base. You don't have to maintain so many. It's more time saving. So it's less time consuming to change one code. It's flexible. It's future scalable. You update a single site, you optimize a single search engine, it saves loading time, it works effectively on different devices. So there are several ways in which we can achieve this. The first one is the viewport that came with the HTML5. What's a viewport? Viewport is the user's visible area of a web page. The viewport varies with the device and will be smaller on a mobile phone than on a computer screen. I will not be able to show this as an example to you right now because I'm only presenting on a computer screen, but if you can see any website on a mobile phone and on a tablet, the first thing you will see that is that the size of the web page, the width of the web page gets altered automatically. That's because of the viewport. So this is defined in the meta tag, in the header tag of the main HTML page. Well, like I told you before, the tablets and mobile phones earlier, the web pages were designed only for the computer screens, and it was very common for the web pages to have a very static design and a fixed size. Then, when we started surfing the internet using tablets and mobile phones, fixed size web pages were too large to fit the viewport. To fix this, browsers on those devices scaled down the entire web page to fit the screen. This was definitely not perfect, but was a quick fix or a quick workaround that we thought about. And the next one is the media queries. Media query is a CSS technique that is introduced in CSS3. This media query is very popular technique for delivering a tailored style sheet to different devices. We will be seeing some examples of it today. Next is the flex box layout, the flex. The main idea behind the flex layout is to give the container the ability to alter its items, the width or the height or the order, to best fill the available spaces, mostly accommodate to all kind of display devices and screen sizes. A flex container expands items to fill available free spaces or shrinks them to prevent the overflow. So what's the difference between the media query and the flexbox? Flexbox goes inside of a rule set. Media query is outside of a rule set. And the flexbox tells an element how to take up space, but the media query tells how the content is being viewed. We next have the fluid layouts where we talk about the float. And then we have grid. CSS Grid is more or less a hybrid and more powerful form of Flexbox. Many have argued on the websites, in the articles, we have so many articles online. Many have actually told that whatever you're doing with Flexbox, you can do it much easier with fewer lines of codes with Grid. So with CSS Grid, you get to create flexible grids in a more straightforward way, as you can define the columns and rows you want with the grid autoflow property set to either the column or the row. So what's the difference between the CSS grid and the Flexbox? CSS grid is particularly for a layout, but Flexbox is particularly for alignment. Flexbox is one-dimensional layout system that we can use to create a row or a column axis layout. It makes our life easier to design and build responsive web pages without having to use very tricky hacks and a lot of float position properties in our CSS code. But with CSS Grid, it's a two-dimensional layout system, so we can work with rows and columns together, which means that it's open for a lot of different possibilities to build more complex and organized design systems. So we have this image over here. So it says mobile first. I'm going to talk about something called a mobile first approach. So moving forward, all the companies that make a website, they target mobile first approach. So what does it mean? It means that when you make a web application, you will have to make sure that the design is first targeted for a mobile phone, for a smaller resolution. If we do in that way, we will be easily able to expand it for larger widths and devices. So if you see here, this is how it's going to be. So we have an image over here. So we have an image over here. So, and then we have a content. It looks like a calendar. And then we have another image over here. So when this particular website is going to a bigger screen like this, probably this is a tablet or this can be a smaller computer screen, a smaller laptop, then this image needs to get expanded like this. It needs to cover the entire width. And then both of these needs to come one next to each other. And when this particular screen is expanded to another device, this screen needs to come out like this, and then both these underlying images needs to come one below the other. So mobile first and desktop last. So most of the companies right now follow this approach because this is much easier. This is much easier to code, to maintain. So